So I made a short about this a little while ago, but I wanted to explain it in more detail. So I'm going to be explaining exactly why you may or may not want to use bands as an additional resistance for an exercise. There are kind of two functions for bands, making an exercise easier or making an exercise harder. Now, making an exercise easier would be like using them to assist with pull-ups or reverse banding a squat so it lightens the load. Making it harder would be like traditionally banding a squat, or in my preferred use, putting it on the leg press. The interesting thing about these differences is that they really aren't that different. Let's say, for example, a regular banded squat and a reverse banded squat. In these cases, when you lower the weight, the band is either shortening and producing less force down onto you, or stretching and pulling the weight up, producing less force down onto you. So in both instances, the rep is more difficult at the top and easier at the bottom. The only real distinction is how much weight you're using. Let's say you're using 225. The normal banding method would be heavier than 225 at all points in the motion except the bottom, while the reverse banded would be lighter than 225 at all points except the top. Again, because one is pushing you down and the other is pulling you up. The absolute load is different, but the resistance profile is the same. Now, the resistance profile is how hard the movement is at each point in the range of motion. For example, a pull-up is easiest at the bottom and hardest at the top. A squat is easiest at the top and hardest at the bottom, and a curl is easier at both ends and kind of harder in the middle. So this begs the question, when are bands most effective? Well, if you haven't guessed it yet, it's the one I used the example for. Exercises like squat, where it's hardest at the bottom of the rep. So this can be with squats, bench press, leg press. Most effective with those pushing movements, because those are the ones with the resistance curve that favors the band's usage, since applying it will even out the resistance curve. This helps you get more reps, closer to failure, and more safely, since you're less likely to get stuck at the bottom of the rep, since it won't be as hard, and since there's less load on your joints in that stretched and potentially compromised position, you don't have to be worried about injuries. My favorite use for the bands is leg press, for all the reasons I already described, but it's also very stable, and I can push myself to failure on every set. Now, this isn't a necessity, but I prefer this training style. I'll go into that in another video though. I hope this was helpful for explaining how bands work in slightly more detail than last time. Thanks for watching.